Hastings Economic Development and Redevelopment Authority. We have a quorum tonight, so we'll get going. Our first order of business is the minutes. Anybody have a question on the minutes? If so, I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner. Moved by Commissioner Johnson, second by Commissioner Fox. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. All right. Before we move on in the minutes, I just would like to let Madeline Swanson know that the minutes have been just really great. I was reading through them this time, and they were so detailed, and they conveyed everything that happened, and it just seemed like a different level of that. So she probably listens to us because she's doing the minutes, right? Madeline, you're doing a great job. So I was reading through them, and then I got to the bottom, and I said, "Oh, okay, that's one of your interns." So nice job.
Pass that along. That's
Yeah.
the kind of work she does.
Okay, great. So we'll go on to bills.
Yeah, as far as bills go, one of the bills we have here is a pass-through for a land sale, so we'll get approved for that, from the proceeds of it. And then, all right, and then legal bills, and then we've got an ongoing contract right now with Block 28 lawn maintenance and then snow maintenance, so that's what that is. And I can stand for any questions.
Any questions for John? If not, I'll stand for a motion to approve the bills.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Pemble, second by Commissioner Carter. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. We're on to the business portion of our agenda. The first item A is authorized signature agreement for professional services, Evoke Partners. I don't know if that's going to be Alex or John. Okay.
Okay, we're on. This light doesn't work. What we have for you is an agreement for brokerage services with Evoke Partners for the 55-acre shovel-ready development site in our industrial park. Previously, the city entered into an agreement with Rocos Advisors, and we're working with their employee, Raisa. And due to staffing changes, Raisa is going off on her own, starting her own brokerage. And staff opted to continue with the relationship built with Raisa instead of continuing with Rocos. So this Evoke Partners is her new company, and they would provide all the same similar services that Rocos would, and that Evoke Partners would be compensated only upon successful sale of the property. The compensation amounts the same as with Rocos, 3% of the sale price, which would be added to the gross purchase price of the property paid for by the buyer. Are there any questions?
Commissioner Fox?
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor. Do we need a motion to approve? Sorry.
We do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Menke, for the description and for the information at our previous meeting about all of this as well. I make a motion to approve this proposal.
A second.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Commissioner Fox, second by Commissioner Carter for approval to sign the the agreement for professional services with Evoke Partners. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Carries. All right. We're on to item B in our agenda, authorized signature proposal for relocation services, SRF Consulting Group, Inc.
Alrighty, Commissioners, thank you. So in the continued commitment to redevelop Block 28, the city has engaged with SRF Consulting Group to generate an agreement to provide relocation services for the occupants of 418 Vermilion Street. The services are going to be provided to two businesses, a single-chair barber, which is Dick's Barbershop, and then the billboard owned by Lamar. And then also two residential apartment units that will need to be vacated. The estimated cost is about $10,500, but that may change if the scope is altered. SRF will be providing the following, services, which is distribution of an informational booklet and data on the relocation assistance, assistance with moving expense claims, direct loss claims, and fixed payment claims. Any questions on this?
Commissioner Johnson?
So is this something that would be paid if a relocation was needed, like we went for the full term of their contracts or their leases, or this happens regardless?
I will yield to Mr. Hinsman for this one.
Yeah, with the contract here, we're paying them to provide the services, so the bulk of that $10,500 would be paid for them to do the analysis to make the determination of relocation benefits on that. So most of that would be paid up front.
Commissioner Pemble?
Yeah, thank you. Alec, has the city used SRF before? Or John?
Sure. Commissioner, we have used SRF in the past on other things related to TIF districts, but not related to housing, the relocation services. We haven't been involved in this in quite some time.
Yeah. I was just curious. I didn't know if way in the past that it had been used and if this was the company that was used. I mean,
It's been a good 20 years, I think, since we've
was
had
gonna
a
say-
relocation of a business from property we've owned.
the price and the contract with this company, I have no problem with it. I would support it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think the questions were answered, but this would just be for the professional services. Then in addition to that would be any relocation. Can you give us just a Reader's Digest again on what we're looking at as far as relocation services, or relocation costs, I should say,
Sure.
for the properties that we've acquired now?
Yeah, Madam President, we'll be employing SRF to do that for us, but in a ballpark sense, there's obligations we have as a public entity if we're buying property and forcing the vacation of residential, commercial, and the other lease we have there. It may be something in the $20,000 range.
And my recollection was there was something built into the contract for lease terms and things like that. So the longer, obviously, that somebody maintains their business or their lease, the less we'll pay in relocation fees.
Correct.
Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was my recollection, too. Anybody have any other questions on this one? Okay, if not, I'll stand for a motion.
I move that we authorize the signature for the agreement.
Second, Your Honor.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Carter, second by Commissioner Fox to authorize the agreement with relocation services with that's SRF Consulting Group. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. I think that's our business portion, unless anybody else has anything to add to the agenda. Okay, we'll go on to reports and information. I think the first item, well, I know the first item is a open to business second quarter report.
Madam President, Commissioners, thank you. So as you know, the city and the county pay to use the service Open to Business, which is through MCCD, and that provides residents and prospective businesses the opportunity to use free services through the Open to Business program. Quarterly, they provide a report just to see how things have been going through the year. So for their Q2 report, it indicated that 13 Hastings businesses and 8 Hastings residences have reached out to and received small business guidance from the Open to Business program. They also highlighted in their report that 2 Hastings businesses have received financing from MCCD as well.
Questions about that before we move on? Commissioner Fox?
No questions, Your Honor. I just want to highlight how wonderful this program is. As a small business owner, I have used it a few times, and they just do a really incredible job of guiding small businesses through some challenging times, through opening, through financing, whatever small businesses need to get started or keep going. They're just really there for them. So if anyone in the public that's listening is interested in starting a small business, Open to Business is where you should start. So I cannot highlight that enough. So thank you for the report.
A couple things to add to, and I echo the responses there too. We've been very fortunate with the representative that we've had with Open to Business right now, Natalie Musso. She does a phenomenal job in what she does. And in the near future, I'd like to have her either here in person or via Zoom just to give an update on some of the activities that she does. I know one of the things that she'll be doing, the next Makers Market that we have at the end of the month, she's going to be there just to go and talk to some of the vendors there and see if they need assistance. So, taking that type of proactive work is great.
Thank you, Commissioner Fox. I also echo that. I know that on several occasions when I was down on with Eric, meeting with business owners in downtown and around, things would come up, either challenges or opportunities to increase the growth. And I know that was something that Eric always said, this is a really great resource. And, sometimes businesses didn't know it existed. And it was like one of those reminders that we have, like you said, this great resource, and just getting the word out to the community. Use it. It's free, right? It's always great when something's free. Thank you. New development updates.
Yeah, I can go through a few updates here. I'll go through the Confluence a little bit more in detail in a minute here, but some of the other things, non-Confluence going in around town. Last council meeting, we approved a utility study for what we term the Augustine property, which is property that is west of the current city limits, north of 15th Street, east of Jacob, up to Highway 55, kind of that property there. It's within our comprehensive plan for development. Our sewer plan shows development through areas that developers show no interest for the trunk line. So we're looking at the capacity of existing lines directly to the east of it to serve. What this means in English is they're desiring to develop the property, and we're trying to find a way to do it in the shorter term. So they're paying the bill for that. This is indicative of the desire to develop. So that's great news there. On the Thorwood property, this is the old burnt mansion on 15th or 4th Street and Pine Street. Council did approve a special use permit to allow use of the first floor for a meeting space for 25 to 30 people. This provides a use necessary for the development of the property. What's happening with the property right now, they've been issued a building permit with the structural plans. That's taken a while for that to come together. They will continue the demolition of the project. The owner of the property, Pavel, stated at the last meeting that he intends for this to be, the demolition to be complete and covered by the winter's time, so we're not going to deal with another season, and it should be looking a lot better here as we go forward. So that's all great news. It's been a long time coming, that's for sure, but I'm thankful for the work that Pavel's been putting in here. KFC's under construction, more of that to come on Vermillion Street, which is great. We've got a concept plan in, revised concept for Shepherd of the Valley townhomes, about 15 townhomes just to the east of there. And so it appears that that's going to be coming through Planning Commission in the near future. And that's probably most of what we have for new updates at this point. So I'm going to come up here for a second and talk a little bit about the Confluence. And let's see. Go. Now, that's a project that a lot of people have been talking about for a long time and wondering when it's going to finally come to fruition on this one. And we're just about to that point right now. I think it's important to note that this property has been through a number of different individuals over time. I did a calculation here since we started talking about this project in 2009 to its completion coming up in the next few weeks, that there has been 31 people between HEDRA and City Council that have been involved in this project, elected officials and commission members on there. There's not one individual that began this project in 2009 that is still in that position today. So it's really taken the fortitude of the commission here, as well as the City Council, to stick through things that perhaps were not part of their original vision, and things that were constantly changing on the project. I had a presentation that I had at our State Economic Development Conference last month that kind of highlighted the history of the project. I kind of condensed this a little bit here because I think it's good to be able to show what we've done and what has become from it. So I want to walk through a couple of things from that presentation here. As we know, it's going to open up at 77 hotel rooms, the apartments, the restaurant, Missy's, Chamber of Commerce, the ballroom for 350 guests. These are all going to be great additions to the city here. Had a history on there of development since the 1870s. Didn't realize we were the third largest lumber producer in Minnesota, which was interesting to note. The sawmill closed on that site in 1909, and Hudson Manufacturing came in. Hudson Manufacturing was in that plant for over 100 years, in that building. When I first got here, they were kind of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. They kept to themselves. We had made overtures to them in the past because we always had a goal of moving all the industrial property off of the riverfront. And they were the last piece at that point. And they had no interest in moving. When the bridge project came forward a couple years later, that was what was really the impetus for their move. And one of the founding documents that we had, 2002, we put together this Heart of Hastings plan. It's a plan that we use even today. It talked about the bridge, it talked about Hudson, it talked about our undeveloped land. It put together our vision for development. The Hudson property was in there at that time. And so it's great to see something that was envisioned 20 years ago and even further before that to be where it is today. So we acquired the site in 2010. When the Hastings Bridge came through, this is a great old picture here, the old blue bridge. The new bridge comes forward like this. So this building was in the way, had to be removed. Hudson was at the point where something needed to occur. They were either going to bifurcate their operations and have shipping and receiving at a different location, manufacturing here, or move to a new location. At that time, there was a vacant building coming up on 10th Street near Public Works, which was a former plant of Intech that Intech was looking to get rid of. So we're able to go through a three-way property deal on that one so that we could be able to get the property from Intech, transfer that over to Hudson, they could move over, and we could acquire the building. So HEDRA and the City Council put together a package in which we acquired the property for $3 million and went about what we're going to do with it. So this is what the property looked like when we bought it. It was 200,000 square feet. If you take a look at the riverfront right here, especially with these buildings here, they were right smack dab against the riverfront. We had a trail that went behind the buildings, and many of you may recall what that trail used to look like. I mean, it was not the most inviting piece in the world, so we really were looking at that as a great opportunity. One of the things that this highlights here is we had a lot of great partners within this project, from granting agencies that helped us do this project that we would not be able to do today. HEDRA was a new organization at that time. HEDRA was formed in 2010. So this was really one of the first projects that they took on. And it was a huge project to take on at the time. The goal for HEDRA at that time was to create a destination. Something that when people crossed over the Hastings Bridge, they would see this thing and say, we have to check out Hastings, to create another bookend to the downtown. Now, how that was going to be done, we didn't know. We didn't know if it was going to be something in which we just cleared the site completely, or whether we would be in a position in which we would rehab the building. So we went about doing that and decided through a reuse study with the public in 2011 that yes, the public wanted us to keep the building. It was a part of our history, and we would do that. We had the understanding with the council and HEDRA, and we knew that the project as a rehabilitation was going to be a lot more costly, a lot more time consuming, and have a lot more problems to it. But the advantage of being able to rehabilitate that building and to be able to create that historic renovation would be worth it, because that's what we do in Hastings. This building that we're in right now could have easily been demolished 30 years ago. It didn't make any practical sense for the county to keep it anymore. It didn't maybe make a lot of practical sense for City Hall to operate it, depending on how much money we've had to spend on upkeep, but this is a part of our history. This is what we do. So we did it. Environmental analysis, oh my gosh. We had so much stuff in the ground there. We had contaminated soils, contaminated building products within there. So we went through our phase 1 and phase 2 environmental. We found soil vapor, water vapor, high concentrations of arsenic, chromium, lead, different chemical formulas that I had no idea what they were. Volatile organic chemicals, diesel range organics, the whole rash of things. So bottom line is, we needed help in cleaning this out. And we were able to get a lot of help from a lot of different agencies to do this, from Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, Metropolitan Council, the US EPA, and from Dakota County CDA, all helping to pay for the cost. Our environmental cost on this project was somewhere around $2.5 million. And the grants that we had for this were about $2 million. So most of what we expended for environmental cleanup were other people's money. 2012, we started demolishing this area, this building portion next to the river, the tip-up concrete building. Strange picture there, we can see the two bridges. And went through a site assessment with Maxfield. Hey, we want to keep this site, what can it yield? We invited a handful of developers at the time to come forward to give us concept plans. Had 4 development concept plans at that time, and ultimately picked Confluence Development. We entered into an original contract with them in 2014, and they had proposed a mixture of residential, restaurant, retail, and hotel. 4 years later, we closed on the property. The development agreement that we had obligated us to certain environmental remediation. Most of that occurred prior to the closing of the property. Some of it continued after the closing of the property. So we ended up selling the property for $1. We ended up establishing a tax increment finance district so that the future revenues of this project would pay the city back and HEDRA back for the initial $3 million investment. So the TIF district that we set up was not geared towards assisting the developer in his project, but more repaying us for our initial investment and purchase from Hudson. So we did that TIF district in 2015, and for a 26-year period, the future revenues of this project will pay us back for that initial investment. And so soil cleanup for about 4 years. We were under there than we thought. Inside the building itself, we had portions of the building that had full basements, portions of the building that were dirt floor underneath there. The dirt was contaminated. And we had a situation down there where we had surprises. One of the things that occurred with the original Hudson factory is that in 1909 there was a fire and it burnt to the ground. So we had the original portion. And what we found out during our excavation between 2015-16 was that when the fire occurred, they just took all the debris and just shoved it into the ground and buried it, and no more, to be opened up years later and at our expense and delay. So we ended up probably spending almost twice as much on contract to have all these bricks and debris removed from the facility. So another one of those surprises that came up, but the council and HEDRA were supportive of it, understood the vision that we went forward with. We installed our vapor intrusion mitigation system to filter out the vapor from the soil itself. Had that contract go in there. That's become, ongoing. We're just about done with that today. I've actually got a meeting to go through some final things tomorrow on that, which will be great. We had wood sealing and encapsulation that occurred within the facility. Contaminants within the wood needed to be scraped off and/or sealed with epoxy paint. That was a very expensive cost, and we had trouble with it in hearing after the fact, so it cost us a little more money than we anticipated on that one. HEDRA is aware of this being the downtown bookend. When we were going through the process of this project, we also were in the process of Riverfront, the Levy Park area. We spent $5 million in downtown investments at that time to create this great area. knowing that Hudson and Confluence would be one of those bookends. We had the Riverfront Park improvements that took place there. This was a grant fund that we received from Metropolitan Council for $1 million to do these park improvements down there. The great thing about this, the park is privately owned by Confluence Development, but we have a use agreement over it for public use. So we get the benefit of the use of the park during 99% of the time, but not the burden of the maintenance of the park itself. We also were granted the next year for a parking garage down there, $1.5 million that paid for almost all of the construction of the parking garage. This again, 120 stall ramp. This was constructed by Confluence, is owned by Confluence, and subject to a public use agreement so that public has the ability to park, and we have some maintenance obligations on that over time. Historic tax credits went into the project itself from the development side. This provides a mechanism for capital to come into the project and was instrumental in being able to finance it. What happens with historic tax credits are sometimes they can be a little bit burdensome and take a little longer time because the State Historic Preservation Office is very particular on what they want to see in that property. And so that took a little longer time to get through that, but got through it. IDM Hospitality, the operator of the hotel and restaurant, came on board in 2019, which was great, and talked about some of the delays that went under. This is a great picture here of the fire from 1909, how it burnt down over there. One of the things that happened here was the historic tax credits investors were lined up in February 2020. And we all know what happened in March of 2020. The world went a different direction. And nobody at that time was in the position of wanting to invest in hospitality during a global pandemic. So that went poof. This is one of those times that Confluence could have just walked away from the project, I believe. And perhaps another developer without local ties may have done that. But to their fortitude, they stuck with it. And out of pocket were able to do some limited things over 1.5 years while they waited for the pandemic to happen and then go full bore and get those tax credit investors back on board again. So this is kind of what it looks like before the renovation in here. This is the new Chamber of Commerce space, very inviting as you walk in the front of it there. This is the area that goes back towards the river, the concrete area. This right now is the first floor apartment areas that is set up. Scenic river views, as you can see through there. Windows look a little bit better than today. This is the ballroom space. The interesting thing about this space, if you go up there today, you can really see this. It's a great big open space. The window, the arches of the ceiling go way up there, and they've really kept it as a great open space. That's the one thing, when you look out those windows and you can see the river, you know, that's the reason why this is such a great development. More of the hotel room space over in this location. And this is what the old exterior looked like for a number of years. Well, one of the challenges that we had through this whole thing was public expectations. Public saw this for 10 years, more than that. I thought the city bought this building. I thought something was going to happen with this building. Why isn't anything happening with this building? There was a lot of things that happened behind the scenes, a lot of things that took patience on this. And I'm appreciative of the council and HEDRA's patience in working through this to get to the project that we have today. So we've spent about $5.5 million so far in our expenses between the acquisition of the building and then about $2.5 million for the various environmental remediation and demolition of that building. But we received almost $5 million in grants. $2 million for project cleanup, $2.8 million in planning and site amenities through 20 separate grants from a variety of different sources. So we've been very fortunate and very thankful for what we've received there. And again, special thanks to you, to the City Council, and to those that have served in those positions previous. This is a listing of all those individuals that have been involved in this project since we first considered this in 2009. So stand for any questions you may have.
I don't have a question, but I just want to say thank you for this detailed presentation. Being a resident and living downtown Hastings, I hear assumptions of what's going on. This building's just sitting there. So for you offering such detail and giving others a different perspective now, maybe more facts, and they can refer to this, or I can refer them to this presentation, because it's, you go back in history and then you also explain the process. And, not everyone understands, the process of how, with the environmental analysis and just the whole process of development. So I just want to say thank you for this detailed presentation, and this is very helpful for the public, especially those that assume that it's just sitting there and nothing is being done.
Thank you.
Mr. Fox?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just as a point of clarification, I do believe there's one person that has been with this project since the beginning, correct?
One person.
I believe it's you. So I just want to highlight that, John. Your perseverance and your vision for this project is really unmatched. And thank you for your work, and thank you for your diligence, and thank you for your vision, because this is going to be incredible. And thanks to you and the way that you've led this conversation, we couldn't do it without you.
Thank you.
I totally agree, and I thought, you presented this at a conference. I'm thinking you could do a professional paper or even a small novel on everything that you had to do from A to Z, and you had a lot of things here that are, some of it's not novel, but it's just one thing on top of another thing, dealing with historical credits, dealing with contaminations, dealing with a pandemic and a chain supply. I mean, this truly has been quite the experience for anybody. So I do echo that too. And from my own perspective, I can say I was probably one of those 15 years ago that would have said, tear the thing down. Truthfully, I was in that camp. And now that I see it, I'm so happy we didn't tear the thing down. I know that there was a lot of cost that went into that. I mean, for me, before it was, it made sprayers. There's nothing architecturally significant about this. But this is our history. And the job they did, even from, I noticed, the new lettering that's going around the middle, and I didn't realize, or I didn't remember that the old Hudson building, they've done just so many small things that pay heritage to where that building was and what it means. So I'm really excited about that. And I keep telling people, oh, it's worth the wait, it's worth the wait. So, I mean, just a little bit that we got to go in there. So I'm excited too. One question I had, you said the back part of the building, I would assume it's that area between the building and the path where they have the raised patio and things.
Yeah.
That's open to public?
It is.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah,
So
that's open to the public. That's one of
Okay.
those strange things too with the project. So there's piers in that held up the old addition that was built in '74. We went in there and tried to dig those things out. We dug some of them out, and we were digging more feet than we ever thought to get down, to a point where we're not digging these things out. What do we do with them? And ended up with the development project going, hey, we can use these for this overlook deck. So it kind of worked out kind of cool that way.
I think that'll be really nice for folks that want to sit and watch the river, but necessarily don't, got 3 kids and don't want to sit in a restaurant or wherever it might be. I mean, it's just going to be such a cool addition. So I noticed there was an event. I mean, I'm not into social media, but I did see there was an event on August 30th or 31st. Is that? Is it open? I mean,
That's always the big question on that one. I have not heard anything officially, but I hear inklings of events happening towards the end of August. So I was in the building today, and that's definitely doable. I mean, it's just about done.
Anybody else have a comment or question? Other than yay? Commissioner Johnson?
I'll just say I moved down the street from that about 6 years ago. It looks visibly better.
A little bit.
It's come a long way. So
Just a
to
little.
watch that progress has been really, really neat. It's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
Anything else tonight? All right. With that, I'll stand for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Carter, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're adjourned.